going to go, like, from our action step from the previous recording there, we're going to have a wee chat about what different voice types and things like that. I know, like, sometimes people tell you what your voice type is, maybe if you're at school, if you're in choir and something like that. But something to bear in mind is that sometimes your voice type can change, especially if you get older, and that's happened to me. I don't mind telling you that, like, very soon I'll be 36 years old, and so my voice has gotten slightly lower. I was what we call a coloratura soprano, which is like pretty high soprano, like singing super high notes like C and all that, and even higher. But because my voice got a wee bit older, then it just always happens that when you do get older, your voice tends to drop. You don't necessarily lose range of your voice; it just kind of gravitates down. Well, that's down for me, but you think left to right, in terms of piano or whatever. So they have more like a coloratura mezzo, so I still sing pretty high, higher than many people, and it's just not as super high as it used to be. But that's just nature. I think that there's always a tendency with singers to want what we don't have. I'm a soprano, quite a light soprano, and when I sing, people describe it sometimes as like it's a bit of a Marmite voice. People love it or hate it, and it's got kind of agility, I guess you would describe it. And some people have described it as having almost like a metallic kind of quality to it or something. Like it's got a uniqueness that cuts through things. So my voice, I guess, being quite distinct is maybe not the best for ensemble singing, like singing in choirs and stuff like that, where the main focus is for the voices to blend together. But if you've got something unique about your voice, it just stands out anyway. It doesn't mean that I'm not singing at a loud volume or anything like that compared to anyone else. Maybe like I'm aware that my voice apparently stands out, so I'll maybe be singing quieter than other people, but it still can pick me out for some reason. I don't get it. I don't really understand because I don't hear it myself. I don't hear it in my own voice. But that just gives you an example that please try not to like be too like envious of what other people have. I think for the whole idea for me about mapping out your voice is to encourage people to work with what they've got. It took me a long time, like my reasoning when I went to learn to sing was that I thought the Queen of the Night aria was like super amazing, and if I couldn't sing that, it means I wasn't a good singer. Well, frankly, I've tried to sing that, but it's always been just a bit of a stretch too far for me in terms of range because it's a high F. But I've been able to sing pretty high, but not had that consistency that guarantees that I'd be able to sing as high as that all the time. So it was changing my mindset from like, oh, I can't sing that. Oh, that means I'm a rubbish singer. I don't know, it doesn't. There's lots of different things you can sing. Apparently, earlier pieces like things like Handel suit my voice, and also composers like Rossini. Because I've got a kind of now that I've got a bit older, my voice has dropped slightly. It means that I can sing it a little bit lower than some other sopranos. So that's kind of interesting, and I'm finding and discovering new repertoire because of that. So guys, remember I asked you to in your action step to think about like what range is that you have in your voice. So I would say, like, to give you an idea, sopranos generally speaking, like for middle C, the reference note I use quite a lot, so that on a piano app is C4. That would be pretty low for a soprano. That might be one of their lowest notes, if not the lowest note that they would normally do. The sopranos can go up to say like comfortably towards the C above that, going up towards like past that, like D, E, F, G, maybe even higher than that. That's when you get into a bit more specialist like coloratura, which is super high, But to give you an idea, that's where a soprano voice would normally sit. And there's a lot of overlap with, say, all the female voices. So say for instance an alto, we're skipping mezzos, but I'll get to that in a minute. With alto voices, say for instance in middle C, we go back to that middle note, the reference note again, C4. That would be pretty comfortable for an alto, because they'll have this lower part of their voice. If you go to the F below middle C, that would be getting towards the lower part of an alto's voice, but they'll also be able to sing quite low down. There's not a lot of overlap with alto voices being the lowest female voice, with say the higher like male voices. They'll have a lot of overlap in terms of the range. But then if you go up to the higher notes of an alto, typically, like say that we had the C above middle C, so you got C4 and it's the C higher than that. That would be like near the top, if not in the top of an alto's range. And so mezzo sopranos kind of sit in the middle. And this is something to remember, guys. The vocal range isn't set in stone. You get a kind of rough guide from it in terms of where your voice sits in range, but range isn't the only thing that you should consider when you're thinking about your voice type. The other things you should consider is the uniqueness of your voice. What does it do? What does it sound like? The rich and the depth of its tone and things like that. I'm a soprano, so my voice sounds quite light and agile. So early music, like say Handel and stuff like that, suits my voice. Agile, and I mean like if you did, like say a run. It's moving around and all that kind of thing. Able to do things relatively quickly, quite a light, speedy voice, I guess is how you describe it. But the things that sopranos don't really have, and maybe they're a wee bit like jealous of our colleagues that have the different vocal ranges, they don't have the like depth of tone and the richness that the lower voices have. But that's the thing, isn't it? Like I'm a soprano, and I'm always kind of like envious of the altos and mezzos because their voices are so gorgeous. They sound so rich and like chocolatey or something. You know? I'm like, I wish I had your voice. But I've become to terms with just appreciate my voice for what it is. You've only got what you've got, isn't it? You know. And so, like, say for instance, another flip side, altos and stuff, they'll have this lovely depth of tone and richness to their voice. But you tend to find that the lower voices in both male and female voices, so the equivalent of that in a male voice would be like baritone and kind of bass and stuff. They tend to be not quite as agile. I can't really demonstrate, and because I can sing quite low as an alto, but as a soprano, sorry. But altos, like, I don't have the depth of tone to demonstrate. In fact, I'll maybe try and find a link to a recording of an alto voice so you can hear the difference in tone. My voice is very light. Altos will have a richness and almost a kind of a darkness to their voice, because it's so kind of rich. They tend to not be able to move around as much. Lower voices tend not to be as agile, but then on the other side, I'm sure some altos wish to be that they could be a soprano because maybe like for particular songs that they like, they might be better suited to being a soprano voice or something like that. They might want to be able to make their voice a bit more agile, and so when we come to mezzo sopranos, they're kind of like the best of both worlds in a way. Mezzo sopranos would be able to, like, if we refer back to the middle C, mezzos are usually able to feel like that middle C is quite comfortable for them, but they'll also be able to sing quite low, like say like A or the G below middle C. But they also got quite a bit of overlap with the sopranos, and that they'll be able to sing quite high around the octave above middle C. Any higher than that, it gets quite tricky. Depends on the person whether or not they can sing any higher than that. Mezzo sopranos often get put into the soprano category even though they're not, and that's because a lot of mezzo sopranos have a very similar range to sopranos, but the difference is in the quality of their voice, the uniqueness of their voice. They have a richer depth of tone to their voice compared to sopranos. Generally speaking, a bit more comfortable, kind of sitting a little bit lower than sopranos normally do in their songs. But they also have a slightly lower range and lower extension, like going from middle C downwards, that most sopranos don't have. There's also a thing as well about like mezzo sopranos, well, their voice will sound a bit richer. It's kind of in the middle, like sopranos are light, altos are kind of rich, depth of tone, mezzo sopranos are kind of a mix in the middle. If you imagine so mezzo sopranos have a kind of similar thing with, say, baritones would be the male equivalent for them. In kind of male like voices, tenors, the like middle C, think of that as kind of like a kind of reference and note for them as well. The middle C will be kind of like in the middle of their voice, be quite comfortable because they can sing it probably quite a chunk lower, like D below middle C, but they'll also probably be able, like people that are quite skilled tenors can also sing up to the C above middle C. But baritones are a bit lower again, in that their notes their voices will probably start, like roughly speaking, about F or the G below middle C, and they might be able to go a little bit higher around middle C, but they'll also be able to sing lower than a tenor. Like say, like even around, if you go for middle C, the C below that, and then from there, even the notes below that, say a low F or something like that. But baritones have a similarity to mezzos in that they don't have the depth of tone that, say, a bass would have, but their voice is more agile. But then, like say, tenors, they have the agility and lightness to their voice that's also the same as sopranos. But with tenors, they'll like, same as sopranos, be envious of the other voices and other voices because they have this lovely depth of tone that like lighter voices don't have. So what we're going to do next, guys, for your action step for this is maybe to just kind of write down what you think your vocal range might be from my general advice. If you have any questions or queries directly related to this particular post, I'm happy for you to send me an email, or if you want to maybe send a recording of your range and things like that, and I could give you some guidance on what range type that you are. Next thing as well is kind of attached to this thing about your vocal range, have a look at the next little thing. It's actually going to be a screencast of some Spotify playlists that I've made for the most common vocal ranges.